we think software consists of the display of data on different platforms, and also its design and presentation. So the original goal of Glide was to get you as far as possible based on the data you already have, assuming that you already have data, which is true. Companies already have lots of data, they don't have software. So I'll give you a quick demo of what I mean by that. So you go to glideapps.com and sign up for free. Would you guys mind closing the door? And when you create a project in Glide, you pick whether you want it to be an app or a page. This is sort of the mobile optimized version of Glide, and this is web and desktop. We'll talk about both of them. But we're just going to start by creating an app for Andy's this event. It's an event app.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're organizing this Nocode conference. It's last night. We don't have stock. We have a list of all of our attendees because we've been obviously but we don't have anything to show them. So the first thing you do in Glide is you can name your project. But the second thing is you pick where your data is. And the data sources that we've emphasized here, these are the non-technical, common data sources that everyday people in companies use all the time. So what you don't see here is Microsoft Cloud SQL, Oracle, REST API. This is what people who are not developers, this is where they do their work all day long. Excel, Google Sheets, Airtable, or upload an Excel file. So in this example, we'll start with Google Sheet. Google Sheet was the first data source that we supported in Glide. We also have a built-in one, so you can use Glide sample. And I'm expecting some glitches because the internet has been a little bit slow, and Glide is entirely reliant on the internet to actually work. But right now, it's trying its best to load the next screen, where we'll pick one of our Google Sheets. And if this doesn't work, I'll try reloading the browser. Okay.
It's a glider.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, switching to hotspot. I'm going to try. Okay, running off of LTE now. Fingers crossed. We only have 500 megabytes. Let's do this. Okay, so new project, conference. We'll pick a Google Sheet. And Glide will show me the contents of my Google Drive. These are just my Google Sheets. This is kind of obvious. And this is a spreadsheet just with a list of everyone, all the vendors attending this conference. So when I pick it, Glide reads the Google Sheet and does a very simple analysis of all the data. And then it tries to construct the app that thinks we want. So it was very important for us with Glide, one of the design principles, is never start with a blank screen. So it's looked at all the data, and it's identified some things. These look like URLs to pictures. These look like titles. These look like less important details we may not want to show at the top level. And if we go over to this data tab, this is just a reflection of all the content in the Google Sheet. So Google Sheet has two tabs, source and types, and have access to this. Yeah, here's the Google Sheet. In the first row, we have labels. This is like a table. Name, type, need help with, website, etc. And Glide looks at the values and it says, oh, like these are URLs. So if we go into one of these pages, you can see it's allocated the design of the entire app based on components. So it's put a component on the screen for each one of the columns in the sheet. So basically, like, if you're happy with this, this is an adequate, I would say, this is an adequate app for this conference. where we can publish it right now. All these apps are published as web apps. They don't go to the App Store. So maybe I say Nocode Paris. Publish it. And then I'm going to change the privacy. So this is an important piece of differentiation for Glide. Glide is primarily designed for creating private applications for your company. So the default, this is limited to only the users who are already in the spreadsheet can access the app. But for this demo, I'm going to change it to public, and I'm going to make sign-in optional. So now, if this connects to the network and publishes the app, I'll just do a quick zoom here. Go ahead and scan this QR code with your phone. It's not too small. And if you are able to get on the Wi-Fi, this app will load on your phone and you can add it to your home screen. So those are the very basics. Take the data, automatically try to generate the software we think you're going to build. But then we give you very high-level controls for sort of doing fine-tuning. So you might say, well, our conference is at night, so we want a dark theme, and blue is our accent color. And for these sponsors, we want to do more of a tile layout with a tall image. So you can quickly change the design of the application, or maybe want sort of a square orientation with two columns. So there's these very high-level design controls, because especially with mobile, there's a common set of patterns that people expect, and you don't need to describe that the text label should be slightly darker and bolder than the secondary detail label. These are things that the environment should just reflect for you. So Glide does all this high-level design. You can also see it, if one of your users were to install this on Android, it's going to automatically adapt to the Android design language, so it looks great on their screen. You can see sort of change the icons in the menu bar and change the language a little bit. Or if they open it on an iPad, it's automatically going to provide them with the tablet version. So this is the theme of Glide, like automatically give you as much software as possible that doesn't have to do specifically with the thing that you're trying to solve. Don't reinvent the wheel every time about how it looks on Android versus how it looks on your dark theme on iPad. Make it automatic. So I'm just going to go back to maybe a light theme. And then it's a very high-level design system. So this title component doesn't look great because of the formatting of this image. You can change the style to be something a little bit more contemporary. Usually you want to look around and pop, especially if you're dealing with people. Here's base row. And then the design system works by just adding components to the screen that bind to the data. So for example, here it has type sponsor. You might just replace this with, let's just use the text component and put it towards the top and bind it to the type and make it all caps, centered, and large. And maybe we'll even put it above the title. So you design one screen, but it applies to every single screen, and it's just mapping the design of the screen to all the other data in your sheet to create the rest of the screens. You can see it created these other screens for other data in a spreadsheet, but it looks like we don't have any attendees here. Let's take a look. So this is just information. So maybe we want to add, let's see, I'll add it here. We have visitors. And visitors have a name and maybe a comment. Let's do a date as well. I'll put David, happy to be here. And in Glide, we'll trigger it to refresh. And it's going to discover that there's a new sheet in the Google Sheets. Click it again. Okay. So there's the data coming in from the Google Sheet. And I'll take this screen. I'm just going to delete this screen and users. I want to add a screen where the data is this visitors table we just created. And I'm going to allow you to date, I actually want special value to write to the date field. The name I want to be required. For the comment, I'll make it a large text entry. Once it's handy, I am here with David. So one thing you'll notice is as you're designing the app, just like a spreadsheet, when you're creating a spreadsheet, like it is the spreadsheet. You don't build your spreadsheet and then click run the spreadsheet and then open another thing and use it. This is the live working app as you're designing it. So I'm going to add Andy as a row on this page. And if any of you open the app on your phone, if you refresh it, you'll have this page. You go ahead and add some data. And if we go over to the spreadsheet, the data is just constantly synchronizing back and forth. And this creates really powerful workflows for business. So let's just see, can anyone else? Was anyone able to actually load the app?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and add one if you can. You can see the information keeps coming in here. So you'll have people in the company who, Sarah, we'll change Andy's comment. You'll see the data will flow in here as it continues to update. So yeah, this lets you create really interesting workflows because you have businesses that are already doing everything in a Google Sheet or an Excel file, and then you can just put a user interface on top of it. And this live sync is super powerful. So those are the basics of live apps. How do they become interactive? So if you look at one of these screens, use the screen for live. I'm going to delete some of these components, and I'm going to add. Let's do another text entry. And I'm going to add. This is actually a pretty interesting thing. I'm going to add a text entry for a new column in this sheet called notes. I'm going to make it user specific. So I added a column called notes, and I'm going to bind this text entry I just put on the screen to it. Okay. And I'm going to bind this text entry to this notes column and make it large. So I added notes to each sponsor's page for the conference, so attendees can take notes. And this, you probably missed it because I went too quickly, but we've created a column in the Google Sheet, but it's not quite in the Google Sheet. It has the special property of being user specific. So you can see in the upper left we have David Siegel as one of the users. Let me add another user here. So let's say I'm an attendee of the conference and I want to take some notes. This tool looks great. I can just take some notes and that writes into that column, but just for this user. And then when Andy opens his copy of the app, he's going to have his own values here. Say, this tool looks rubbish. So this is a very subtle feature. It's built on the concept of a spreadsheet. So we've added a column to the spreadsheet, but every user of our application has their own values in that column, which creates a really powerful sort of multi-user design. So we switch back to David. You can see it's going to switch back to his note. So it's a very simple way of building on top of this conceptual model where you have interface elements connected to a spreadsheet, but we add more concepts and more power to just user-specific columns. And then how you do advanced programming in Glide is through computed columns. So I'm going to make a new column in the spreadsheet, and these are all the column types we can add, and you'll be familiar with these sort of basic value types from Airtable, for example. You have a Boolean, like a checkbox, but the power in Glide comes from these computed columns. So I'm going to, first I'll do a simple greeting column. So greeting, actually let's do that in the users column. So we're going to make a greeting for every user of our app. And we'll call it greeting, and we're going to use a template column. So if if you're writing a spreadsheet, at this point you would be using sort of a string concatenation function to put text together. But Glide, our assumption is that even writing spreadsheet formulas is too technical for most people. So we have a higher level form that's a demonstration of how we think about programming in general inside this environment. So we want the greeting to be, hello, name. This is what we want to say to everyone, hello, name. But we want to replace name with whatever is in their name column. So this is a computed value being saved to the back end through my phone. This seems like it's not going to work. What you would see is hello, comma, David Siegel, hello, comma, Andy, and it's computed as these values change. Okay, there it is. It's your round trip. So if we add, if Susan signs up for the app, it's going to compute hello, Susan. And the way you create algorithms inside Applied is one by one, these little computed columns all stacked on top of each other. And you'll see if we go, let's make a users table. So we're going to add a new table to show our users. And you can see it has their name and the greeting. And if we go into one of these and we add a text entry, we'll change the title to show like this. And the details will be, so the way you design and Glide is you put these components on screen and then you point at which column they connect to either display the data or to read and write the data back. So I'm just going to put that here, David Siegel, hello David Siegel. And we put a text entry that has the name. And if I remove my last name, the entire application is instantly recalculating through all of those computed columns as the data changes, and also as it synchronizes. So you get this fascinating reactivity that as values change, as numbers increment, these conditions can change and can update the display of the application. So for example, let's do one more. Let's add how many snacks this person has had, okay? And this is just going to be a number. So like one snack, okay? Do one. Okay, so there's snacks. And we're going to put this on screen. So we're going to add another action text. Snacks. Okay. Snacks. One snack. Okay. Now we're going to add a button. Eat snack. And when you click this button, we want to do something kind of special. I'm going to increment the number of snacks by 1. I'm going to play a sound, and I'm going to show a notification. Snack. That's a terrible sound. Our sounds need updating. In Glide 3, we're going to have new sounds. Ping. Here we go. Save. Okay. So every time, jeez, that's not better. Every time you press this button, it's going to increment the snacks, play a sound, show notifications. Very simple. Like there's no code, and this is constantly. I have to change that sound. That's horrible. We need like a. We don't have a bite sound.
We need a preview of the sounds.
Here we go. Yeah, we do need a preview. Okay. That's better. Okay, so we've created a little bit of feedback, interactivity in the application. You can edit the data, you can increase the snacks. And all the time, we go, oh, actually, those user profiles are just stored in Glide and are not syncing to the Google Sheet, but you can see they come back here. Now, let's add one more computed column to finish this demo for this app. And this is like health suggestion. Okay. So we're going to say if snacks is greater than 10, we should say stop snacking. Else, please snack away. Okay. And then we're going to put this on the screen as a hint component to show text will be this. let's do a warning color and suggestion. Put it right above the button. Okay, so we're going to go to David, who has had 0 snacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Recalculating as the numbers change. Tells me to stop snacking. I'm going to put this at the top of the screen. And I'm also going to set a visibility condition on this. So we only want this hint to show. Let's just show when snacks is greater than 10. Okay. So we'll go to Susan, who's had no snacks. She's eating snacks. So this is, we haven't written any code, and we've created an app powered by a spreadsheet that's syncing back and forth, that's interactive, that's writing data, that has conditional behavior, that's generating text. It has logical conditions that determine what information to show and whether to hide or show things. It's like 90% of software, and that's it. And then you throw in the fact that we try to give you a really great design. You don't have to think about these icons. You don't have to think about how it's going to look on iOS or change on Android. So those are all the basic building blocks applied, and when you put these together, you can create enormously powerful apps. So we'll just go preview one. Let's copy one of these templates. Just show you what's our. We have till 3.
45 minutes.
45. Okay, great. Let's look at. Let's see. Let's go to glideapps.com/templates. Let's find like a finance. Might hit our data limit any second. Okay, here's one. Here's a personal budget tracker. So you can go see all the different types of apps you can build with Glide, and you can preview them really quickly. So I won't even copy this one. You can view this even without signing up. So all of these apps, you can actually sort of run them in your browser immediately and see them working. You can add expenses to this app. So this is an example of the Glide app. And here you can see behind it the data model and all the calculated columns. Actually, let me copy this.
David, do you guys actually push this to the marketplace, or how does that work?
This is all web. There's no app store. So you publish instantly. You share the link to whoever you want. You have access to whoever you want. You can add it to your home screen. Those are not native. There's no app store involved whatsoever. And in fact, if you want to go to the app store, Glide's probably the wrong tool for you, because we're building tools for businesses that want to use these things internally. There's a clause in the app store submission rules, maybe not on the Play Store, but Apple does not take any apps that are exclusive for your employees. They're interested in broad market tools that anyone can get. So they don't like niche private apps in the app store, because then iPhone customers find all these apps that are for the employees of the barber shop. You know, it doesn't make any sense for them. That's not what the app store is for. Okay, so we've copied one of these sample apps, and all of the, there's actually not a lot here. There's a little bit. We can zoom. All of these columns that are green are calculated. So, for example, this is an expense tracking app, and when we add an expense, let me zoom out again. Let's see. We can see that this yellow region is alcohol. Let's have a huge party. Okay. We're going to add an expense. 1,000 for Locos. For Loco is like wine in the United States. I don't know what that is. And it's extremely expensive. Okay. The category is alcohol. And yes, it's recurring. We're going to buy these all the time. And I don't need a photo. So we submitted that, and if we go back and look here, it's not updated. Wonder what's happening. Make it into the sheet.
You need to drink before.
Oh, does it not include recurring expenses? I don't know what this check mark is for. I guess if it's recurring, it doesn't include it. Anyway, we just discovered a bug in our chart rendering that when you have something that's so dominant, there's a weird bug that's happening here. But the point being that, let me just go change this. These expenses are being grouped by a category. So this is the categories table where we have alcohol. And this column right here, wow, I already played this joke years ago when I made this, so I'm not very creative anymore. But this items column says, that's very confusing. This is a little bit more sophisticated than I expected. Here we go, items all time. So, take the category and match everything in items where the category is the same. And what this is called a computed relation. It's kind of like a query. And it finds every expense item that matches each of these queries. And so here's 4 loco and 1,000 4 locos. And then it uses a math column, or a roll-up rather, summarize the values of items cost by calculating the sum. So as more expenses come in, so we can see, here's MISC, right? MISC has none. And we can just edit this directly in the data. So we have unknown expense, category MISC. So let's bring it all back down to earth, 1,000. We have like a $3,500 miscellaneous expense right here. If we go back to categories, MISC, you can see we're now matching the unknown expense. So it's computing all the matches, and then it's doing math. It's summing up all of the costs. So with this hopefully simple model, and now you can see MISC is not on here for some reason. I'm not sure why. Oh, again, there's this complex extra feature in here of whether something is included. I don't really know how that's used, but now MISC is included in the graph. Just simple concepts of matching values from different columns across multiple tables, and then doing summaries where they get added up or averaged, and then finding them to interface elements on the screen. And everything is recalculating instantly, just like with the spreadsheet. So you get this really cool, quick feedback. Any questions so far?
I have one question, if I may. First of all, thank you for the presentation before, and this one really cool. It's really hard to do it without internet, so good job there. The question I have is, in the previous demo, the simpler one,
Yeah.
you started changing data inside Glide and with those computed columns and whatnot. What happens in the spreadsheet when you do that? Are you syncing or are you duplicating data?
Syncs.
So you are actually creating columns in the spreadsheet while you're...
Oh, for the user-specific one?
So for the user-specific one, you have that
User-specific data is all, in Glide, we make it appear as if it's in your table, but this is all stored on our servers exclusively.
Okay.
Because what this is this is a value, you can see right here. So it looks like, it's kind of hard to see. Anyway, you can see this, oh here, I'll move it in. You have this value, this tool looks great.
Yeah.
This is the value in this cell for this user. But when the user changes to Andy, he had a different opinion about this item.
Mm-hmm.
This is the cell value for him. And Google Sheets does not have this semantics where a single cell in your spreadsheet can be dependent on who's looking at it. But this is a kind of a concept we added in Glide. And I think this is where a lot of Glide's power comes from, because we are inventing new technical concepts to express the kind of things you want to do in the software. And we're like, oh, the spreadsheet model is easy for people to figure out, but it doesn't understand user identity. And that was the use case that gave birth to this feature, was a conference app. We're like, we want a notes field, but this guy is writing his review, and then he sees it, like they should be private to each user, so we invented this concept of the user-specific column. And there's more concepts like that as well.
Yeah, very cool, thank you. You're making Google Sheets better.
Yeah, and you can, if you don't want to use, so this users table, whenever you create a project by default, when we create a project from an external data source, we create a table that lives in Glide for you, for your users, because we don't want to add sheets in your company spreadsheets, for example. You can change this users table to be something stored in Google. But I'll do, let's see, one more quick demo.
Can you query those user-specific values?
No, not yet. They're very simple right now. Each user only accesses their own. You cannot, for example,
List all
of your reviews. Yeah, we don't have that. It's something we're interested in, but it's quite complicated to figure that out. Okay, I'll show you one more thing. So, Glide Pages is actually our more contemporary version of Glide. We started with apps, and what we found was being mobile only was kind of hurting our ambition to build tools for business because the term app and seeing the mobile design language, people think we're building consumer apps for the app store. So to support businesses better, we created Glide Pages, which is all the same concepts. Actually, I'll just copy a template. Here's inventory. Preview.
Is there like an aggregated view you can do where every user does actually have the submission and then you can see it in like a,
Yeah, if you just store the data in the sheet, then everyone has the same view.
got it.
And that's why, that's what we had for the table that we made that everyone can see and add to.
Okay.
If your neighbor adds an item to it, like in a couple of seconds, you will see it in your list because it's synchronizing and it's using the same sorts of information.
Yeah, I have the same spreadsheet open on my laptop, and as they're getting out, it's
You're seeing
updating.
it syncing.
Yeah, so these were the values that everyone was adding. You can see these are the dates, the timestamps that I added to that form, so to timestamp things automatically. You can see this column is a little bit unusual. We have to add something called a row ID to external data sources when we do the user-specific columns. Because we need to be able to identify each individual row. And in Google Sheets, these rows don't actually have identities. They can very easily
Delete it.
do this.
Yeah.
Move around the order is not fixed. Okay, so this is Glide Tables. I'm sorry, Glide Pages. It's all the same concepts. Based on your data, it has computed columns, user-specific columns. You design at a very high level by adding components to a screen, but the design language is web and desktop. But it's also responsive. It's actually a little bit confusing. If you open one of these pages on a phone, you're going to get something that looks quite a lot like a mobile app, and we're bringing them closer and closer together all the time. But Glide Pages is the exact same concepts that I showed you before, but with a large format responsive layout and more data density and more action density. So you can define that custom action that I built that happened when we just pressed a big button. You can have a large number of buttons in menus that trigger these custom actions that you build. So if you're building software for a business, especially if they're not predominantly on mobile, you would use Glide Pages and you have all of these services to display data and create more actions.
I would see it as like a really good community tool. I think you guys stand out on mobile, but it's like a community app, like a custom community
a big use case, especially on mobile, is creating these private apps for a group.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a homeowners association or teachers, students.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a simple application, and that's another thing I love about Glide. We have this philosophical difference from spreadsheets and Airtable and other simple tools. Not simple, but other tools where the paradigm is the environment where you create the application is the same one where you use it. So that's a spreadsheet or Airtable. And the problem is the creator has a lot of knowledge and familiarity with all the particulars of how this thing was constructed. And then you give it to 1,000 teachers in the school, and they have access to like delete the button, change the color. They don't know what they can touch and what they cannot. In Glide, the environment where you create this app is not what gets distributed to your customers. They just see this part. They don't get this stuff. And what that lets you do is you just put exactly what you want them to see or access or have control over. So an example of this is we have people who we organize an entire conference for 2,000 attendees in one giant spreadsheet. And we have one of those sheets has all of their names and their photos and a checkbox of whether they checked in. And instead of giving that spreadsheet with all of the details to the people at the front desk, we make a Glide app. There's a list of the names and a checkbox. And all they can do is check or uncheck those boxes. That's all they can access. So that, in other words, that's an interface. Interfaces on top of data that are quite precise. And Glide is a good tool for that.
How do you define user permissions in this in Glide?
So at the highest level, you can choose who can sign into the application. Like I said, they're private by default. You have a couple ways to describe which population of users can sign in when it's private. You can say only people whose email addresses end in mycompany.com, only people who are collaborators in my Glide team, anyone with an email address in the spreadsheet. So you can create a tab in the spreadsheet called Administrators. You can say only the people in this can sign in. And when they sign into the app, you give your email and then it sends you a PIN in your email and then you type in to get access. Or you can have completely public. They either have required sign in or no sign in whatsoever. So we publish this one really quickly. This works.
While you publish, there was another question I had. You were one thing that was really impressive to me was you were editing and playing with the app at the same time, but you didn't publish. So what's going on there? Is it actually as you change? I'm assuming it's not. The changes are not live to the end user.
Yeah, there's
so
two.
What's going on there?
Technically, there's two copies of your app. There's the Builder app, which is this one that you're editing,
Oh,
and then when you actually publish, a copy gets put publicly accessible. So now, if we open this app, it has a required sign-in on. I can't believe I'm still getting internet through the phone. Thank you, Andy. Andy's going to expense his mobile bill. Don't worry about it. So here you can see we're presented with this is kind of ugly, but you have to give an email address to sign in. But we've made this public, so any email address would work. But we can also say there's no sign-in whatsoever on this.
Mhm.
It's going to republish the app with the change. We should actually just remove this without even refresh. 5, 4, 3, 2. I'll just refresh. So we took off the login requirement, and now it just shows the application.
Mhm.
Now the user is not identified, so this user-specific columns thing makes no sense, and there's not a lot of data security. It's open.
Mhm.
But there's a range of options from public to private to half private, half public to fully public. For this use case, with employee information, you wouldn't want that.
You mentioned on the
No.
roles and conditional checks.
Yeah, that's the question I had was around the roles. How do you define who sees what,
Yeah.
basically?
So there is a pretty rudimentary provisioning system in the data model. So for example, we have for customers. This is a list of customers, and you can say so this is a column we'll call their emails.
Mhm.
You can say make row owner. So when row ownership is applied to an email column, then you can only download the row if it contains your email address that you are currently authenticated as.
Mhm.
So right now these are all grayed out because I'm viewing as one of the administrators. I don't know if any of the customers, I don't think there's any overlap between customers and users here. Let's do this one. This is our users table. So we'll add row owner to the users table. And you can see, you will see, so when we did that, it actually went back to the server, implemented a security system. There was a brief moment where we couldn't load any data. But now, here we're showing you, this is a visualization. The app developer in Glide has access to everything. We don't have a way to prevent the person actually making the app from seeing the information yet. But we're viewing as Marie, and she's only able to download her row and none of the others. So if we go back into the application, let's make a new table from our data of all the users. It only looks like there's one user. Because we're viewing as Marie. And if we view as Alan only sees one user. It's only downloading one row.
Okay.
And then there's something analogous to this called roles,
Yes.
where instead of email identity, you can assign a column as being the role. You
Okay.
can do groups. So
So you can do groups and control access based on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you do a conditional check. And you can do that at the page level, you can do that at the component level.
there's also something, unfortunately, this is another interesting aspect of Nocode. Software is not just about letting people do what they could do if they knew how to write code without. I mentioned in my talk, like, you also have to get them to design their software, but also understanding the security model. It's a huge part of getting people to write good software, because you could naively put all of your company's data in Glide, make a public app, and you've leaked all of your company's data. You should use private login for only your employees. Another thing you can do, if it's not actually sensitive information, you could say, okay, the orders are only visible if the current user role, includes admin. So the orders item is missing. Let's change this to our new style. We want the top navigation. Doesn't work at all. You can see that the orders tab is missing here, but let's see, who's a user with admin in their title? We also have to, well, we don't have to do this. We're going to add Fire admin to Alina Smith. So now when she logs in, we might have lost our internet. Orders. When role includes admin. Users. Oh, that's her title. Oh, okay. Sarah Simon is an admin. So Sarah Simon signs in, you can see she can access the orders tab. But that's not a security feature, that's visibility.
Yeah.
Usually when you put those conditions on stuff in the app, there's a big thing that comes up that says this is not a security feature. But if it's just, you don't want people in warehouse A seeing the data in warehouse B, but it's not critical or secure, you can do visibility conditions, but for everything else, there's a simple individual and group-based permission system. But we really want to improve, it's like kind of, you need to study and understand how to apply Still Implied. We want to make it as easy as the design aspects of it, make it very clear, help people understand how to apply it. And to that note, we have a LMS, a learning management system, or a school of Glide. This is all built on Glide. It uses all the features I just showed you, where we have videos that explain how to do everything in Glide. And you can see, let's see if we go to a video, let's go to intermediate concepts, there's a lot of intermediate concepts, computed columns. That's just embedding a documentation, it's kind of boring. But you can see your notes, this is a user-specific column, just like I showed you, so people learning how to use Glide can take notes. And we also have some interesting stuff. We have ambassadors, one of our French ambassadors, Stan, who is here today. They publish all of their own lessons here.
Is this made in Glide?
Yeah. This is all Glide, so yeah. These are all of his videos. You can watch and bookmark and take notes on. So this is built in Glide. This is the Glide pages or the website.
When you have different types of roles, the row owner is not the way to go, right?
What's that?
Like if you have a lot of different roles, like you have a lot of users and you have like 6 or 7 types of roles.
Yeah.
What we did is like we did with the visibility, a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because we did work with the row owner. Because each role has different views.
Yeah.
Is it? Is that the way to go to do it?
I can't say. I mean, I'd have to look at the details. Roles was designed, but the main use case for roles is you have one role in your app. It's admin or it's not admin. So you can make the app for your conference, and you might want the full attendee list to be accessible to everyone who's admin, but each attendee can only see their own profile. That's typical use case. But you can have multiple roles, but I'd have to learn a lot more about your app.
Is it safe enough to build an app?
It depends. Like, it has the personal information of your employees, like their home address, phone number, and bank numbers or something like that. Like, no. So that's why we show a warning when you use visibility conditions, because whoever's using the app, if they're even slightly sophisticated, can open these tabs in the browser and look at all the information going back and forth, and they'll see the information that's not visible in the app. It's just being downloaded still. That's why roles and row owners, that information never gets to the client. It's filtered on the server.
How does it work with the Excel spreadsheet? Does it seem
It's the same. Yeah. But the Excel spreadsheet has to be stored in OneDrive. A lot of people store Excel spreadsheets in Dropbox, like you can't sync that or Box. It's the same concept.
We don't store passwords. I think that's a pretty big callback to for authentication.
What's that?
For users, we don't store passwords. We don't use credentials like that for
Yeah, it's all pin-based authentication, so there's no passwords. You might add an active principle against it.
I have a question. Like for example, on the order tab, if I just I wanna sum like there's an item like an iPad. I want to sum all the iPad as the order.
Yeah.
Can I do this on the front, or I have to do it on
It's a great question. You would have to build that. We don't have sort of an ad hoc query or calculation in the app itself.
Is it something we should do on the or something?
Yeah, we are getting more. So you can see this simple order table. So you can add some very simple stuff here. So let's say we want on this collection, we want to show a filter for sale or restock. Show a search bar. So now we get some very simple filtering on the client and search. So we'll go back and refresh the page. Oh, it's already. So we can search through the data. Oh, we want something from February. Here's February, or you can apply a simple filter. Shows just the sales.
And no calculation made on it.
This is something we want to expand what this bar can do. So a lot of customers are like, oh, I want to filter and search and then download a CSV of everything I can see. That's what we see a lot. So I put it in Excel. We have how we were able to sort of add box and get the client can see summary information, but it's not something we have.
I've seen some pretty crazy stuff. So if you go to the Glide community, we have a bunch of experts in there who know a ton. And I've seen some crazy stuff being done with
You can build it.
columns.
You can build it yourself.
You can build it. I've seen some crazy stuff like, so for searching, like additional faceted search. And it's all being done with computed columns and more advanced techniques. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways is that when you look at Glide, to get started is really easy. Connect a spreadsheet, start building on top of that. But once you start getting into the computed columns and the logic that you can build out there, you can do some really advanced, powerful stuff. And that's where some of those things come into play.
Yeah, you can see. I had trouble remembering how even the expense reporter was constructed. But if you look at the data view for just this orders table, you can see it's computing barcodes. It's relating to customers. It's even calculating based on numbers of what icon to show in the list. It's a lot of pretty sophisticated calculations. And again, like zero code. This is one invariant that we have in Glide. It's like we don't ever compromise by saying, okay, here you're just going to write a little bit of JavaScript. You actually can, so there's like a little bit of an escape hatch. None of these apps use it, but if you dig into our other computed columns, code, yes. You get Excel formula, so that's like even pretty various the Excel language, and then you have JavaScript. So we can call this repeat order, and we can say, I don't know what the code is. I believe it's, okay, let's just do this. Return P1 plus space plus P2. And P1 will be sale or restock, P2 will be SKU. And then let's just so this is running this little piece of JavaScript bound to these column values to do some computation. So you have this little escape hatch if you want to do some internationalization or formatting. But we never rely on that for templates or for core functionality.
JavaScript also for the Glide tab.
Yeah. But all it can do is produce values in the data model. It can't render anything on the page.
Do you have an option to like store notes for your columns? Because for example, you have a lot of columns.
Yeah.
So I also have some apps with maybe like 200 columns, for example, if it's something very large. But like you just said, you sometimes forget like, okay, what was this column exactly
Yeah.
for?
Glide doesn't have comments. We
Will
need
you
to
add
add
that
them.
maybe?
We will.
Okay.
We'll definitely have that.
The importance of good naming protocols on your column.
It's a nice thing. Airtable has
Yeah.
that. So if you go into this if fulfilled icon, you get sort of the configuration of this. But it'd be nice if we had a field that was like description.
Yeah.
And then you can hover and get a tooltip so you can remember.
It'll be fair and nice.
You mentioned that we have like one database in Airtable, and then we have two applications running that points to the same database.
Yeah.
What is the synchronization speed actually? Because once you change some information in one side, it needs to reflect in the other side.
So
Is it
the cool thing about if it's the same account, we use the same synchronization entity to connect that Airtable no matter how many projects you use.
Okay.
So if you have 100 projects all connected to the same Airtable based on your same team, we have one endpoint in Glide that is doing synchronization. So as soon as we get that data updated from Airtable, all of your apps will update. And the latency on Airtable is, I think we check every minute or every 2 minutes, so a maximum of 2 minutes. But Airtable just today emailed us about their new webhook API, which will automatically notify us of changes. So it should become sub 5 second. And we'll implement that in the next 4 months or something. But if you want high performance, like the fastest thing you can use, obviously with fewer features in Airtable, is use the built-in Glide tables. There's no sync. It's just changes are immediate. That's usually the best performance.
But what do you suggest? Like if we have a calculation fuse in our table, and we also need to
I
have.
don't think we support those.
Yeah.
I don't know if we show. Actually, don't know if we show the calculations. We do with Google Sheets. That was like the trick in the early days of Glide before we even had computed columns. Is you would write formulas in your Google Sheet, and then the Glide app would write the values, and then after a couple minutes could read the result of the computation. Airtable's API is very weird. The Google Sheet just tells us this cell contains the number 10, and we don't know its provenance if it was actually calculated. But with Airtable, we get very weird metadata about.
The recommendation would be like to concentrate every calculation on Glide
Yes.
tables. Yeah.
When you build computations within Glide with our computed columns are instantaneous. We see a lot of people who are relying on calculations in the Google Sheet. You put the name and the order number, and then a minute later, like you get the result of that. We actually did some optimizations to make it a lot faster. Let me show you. This actually surprised me because I was demoing to someone this problem, and it returned much faster than I expected. And I asked our CTO, and he said, "We put this like hot path optimization in." So just watch this. So let's go. Okay, got the budget tracker. Oh, it's not even back to my Google Sheet. Okay, I've got to go to our conference app. Okay, we're going to add in the conference app a new column called greeting that just says, hello. It's been so long since I concatenated with name, enter, error. Not a great experience. We didn't make Google Sheets.
You use
Formula parse error. Maybe it has to be double quotes. There we go. Okay. Suggested all of that. Great. So we've just made a computed greeting column inside of Google Sheets. Very cool. So in Glide, when we open the conference app, there you open up. Oh, it's opening still. Okay. Let's distinguish it a little bit because I think we already got one in here. Okay. Source, greeting. So it's picked up the new column, picked it up before we wrote the formula, and I'm telling it to fetch from Google the greeting. And we'll move it to the starter sheet. So yeah, Glide just sees this text column from the Google Sheet. There's a column, if you were to write into this column, so we say like, hello, Glide is going to write this value back into the sheet, and it just overwrote the Google Sheet, so it's very sensitive. It doesn't understand this. That's one problem. So it just broke the computation in this row. But here, if we add Q, put some exclamation marks, enter 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. I mean, that's a sub-millisecond computation in Glide. We had to do a round trip over the network.
Yeah. Is it the same for Airtable?
It's the same, maybe. I don't think we have that optimization. That was incredibly fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we add in here greeting Glide, and we do template, hello, name, exclamation marks, replacing names with the names, you get a very very similar computation here. And if we change bubble to bubble 1, 2, 3, it's an instant recalculation. So in general, don't put the computations that the app relies on in the external data source because it requires like synchronization and do them in live where they will instantaneously update.
Can you use plugins or like perform like update codes through that?
There's just some simple support for this. So there's a fetch column that can download JSON, you can do some transformations. It's not very optimized. That's something we want to add. It's one of the next steps is plugins and extensions.
Can you connect Glide to any other tools outside?
So
Other than fetching data?
we have BigQuery support for enterprise customers right now, and Google has introduced a connector to BigQuery that can stream all sorts of databases into BigQuery. So that's our first sort of large-scale connection that's coming, but that's read-only data.
I'm talking more about like connecting tools that send data from Glide, transform it, and then bring it back into Glide.
Yeah,
Like
so
what ATS does.
We have
Is that something?
all of the tables in Glide, except this one apparently. Normally, I don't know, maybe it's a networking issue, but I can show you one second. Every table in Glide is supposed to have an API. Normally, each of these tables, I wonder what could be missing.
The app, right? Light apps, maybe.
Plan level?
It might be because this is a free team.
Yeah.
And by the way, everything I've done today is on the free version of Glide. Probably give too much away for free. But on the paid version, the API opens up with all the REST calls for loading and adding, so you can integrate with an external service to build your own sync or update the rows.
Okay.
But you have to do it manually. It's yes code.
Is it possible to protect fields except the user-related field, or the guy?
Kind of. So you can mark a field as. Yeah, maybe it's. Hold on. Let me go to a team that is paid. No. Okay, this is enterprise.
For example, the address or the account number in the list of user. Can I protect the specific field?
Glide is not. It's not very doesn't have great features for protecting at the field level yet. So one thing it can do. So row owners is the main tool here. But if you have, say, this table with pretend this ID is sensitive, you can. Pictures missing all the time. That might be Google Sheets only. Yes. Anyway, and using Google Sheets, you can mark a column as like protected, and then Glide doesn't load it.
Okay.
That's the best. You can still write to it, but it doesn't download. But yeah, we have row level security, but we don't have table level. We don't have field level.
You said that in Glide 3 we're going to have like one single version. It's not Glide apps or Glide pages. How are you imagining like transition? Because we have right now both.
Yeah.
How are you?
You can see. So this is a Glide page, and this was just released this morning. Once it gets small enough, you can see there's a tab bar now. So we're trying to bring over. So if you were to add it to your home screen, it looks much like I had Glide pages on my home screen that look exactly like apps now. The transition will be very difficult for us, hopefully, and you won't notice it, except that your apps will be a lot nicer. That's the idea. But yeah, what we're going to the order of operations in the product is for like new customers. When you create a project, it'll be like, do you want to make an app or a desktop thing? And they'll both be pages. And in the corner, there might be like use the whole line, like for a few months. But what we're trying to do is make an automatic migration from apps to page types.
Basically, I can keep my project on the pages, and then it will be like.
Yeah, it's already a page. It's just going to get all these great mobile features.
Okay.
It's going to be the thing that's challenging for us, which we hope to make not an issue for anyone, is the apps becoming the page type.
Okay.
Because it's a very old code base with lots of special features that we put in there, like the favoriting system. If you've seen that, is like kind of magical, and we don't want magic.
So if you're starting out now and
Use pages.
Use
yeah.
pages.
Use Glide pages. Don't use Glide apps.
Okay.
The CEO of Glide said, "Don't use Glide apps."
Yeah, it makes sense.
But Pages is the new platform. It has a lot of more optimizations, and it's where all the design language is being concentrated. But we still want it. It's very special when you start with an app. We want people are just learning. The app is a simple thing. It's cute. this has been a huge challenge for us to try to create the large scale design language. It's a lot more difficult. Great, everyone. Enjoy using Glide. It's easy to find despite all the details.